All right, everyone. This is not going to be a parsha class. The next two parshas are tedious and laws of purity and impurity about different types of skin afflictions in the hair and the skin. So, it's very important to learn, but a lot of these things don't apply in modern day. Actually, the mitzvah of circumcision is in this week's parsha. But we're going to choose to speak about something a little bit more applicable. Passover. Especially since Passover is 2 weeks away.
2 weeks?
Less, actually. 2 weeks from yesterday. Today we'll be groaning about the matzah and the wine and making comparisons. How late did you finish? The rabbi spoke too long and the kids were so cute. The kids were annoying. You know how it goes. The kids were cute to a point. And this is going to be the last class until after Pesach.
Oh, what am I going to do on a Tuesday evening?
In baseball, which we should probably put on the Yankees game.
Maybe I'll see the end of Wheel of Fortune.
Maybe.
Maybe I'll get to see Jeopardy.
Oh, wow. Now we're just talking. All right, here we go. So one of the things we focus on Judaism is becoming a better person. Self-improvement. The problem with self-improvement is it's like cleaning your house for Pesach. You think you're done, and there's always some more to do. So the question is, should we even bother starting? Right? Or like that old line: the more you learn, the more you know. The more you know, the more you forget. So why learn?
The more you know you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So is it worth starting something we know we're never going to finish? We work on becoming a better person, but there's always some more to accomplish. So why bother? So this is what the Medrash and the Zohar and the Gemara speak about, and we're going to tie it into the story of the holiday of Pesach. Okay, and away we go. But before we go, you guys are part of the community. Have been to my house in Pesach, so nothing I'm saying now is going to be new. But a lot of people have this idea that I'm a little bit crazy on Pesach.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Not an idea.
No
It's a
crazier,
fact.
no
I've
crazier
never seen
than on
anybody even
Simchas
have trouble.
Torah.
No. I don't mean personality. I'm talking about because we kosher everything and we cover everything and we don't use processed foods and everyone, Rabbi Davis from Hollywood coined a great phrase. Anyone who prays longer than me is a fanatic. Anyone who prays shorter than me is a heretic. It's a great line. But the fact of the matter is, Pesach we go crazy. Each his own, you said, but some families go a little bit more crazy, some families go a little bit less crazy. Some families eat everything with the OUP. Some families only eat things made in house. I know people make their own wine.
My grandfather did.
For Pesach?
He made it for all year.
No.
No.
I'm talking about, all wine is Pesach the whole year.
Yeah.
My grandfather did it too. I don't remember it.
No, but I don't know. I don't know how to tell you guys, but your grandparents did it because out of necessity. Meaning.
Well, then why did my father do it?
What I'm saying is that people who drink wine from the store during the year, some people make their own. No, it's a small percentage. You know what I'm saying? People go a little bit crazy. I don't mean crazy in the literal sense. They go to extremes. Why? Because the prohibition of having any chametz is the most minute amount. And unlike milk and meat, which a small bit of milk falls into a meat pot can be nullified 60 to 1, or there's other things that ratio 100 to 1, 200 to 1, 1,000. Chametz can never be nullified. You have the smallest amount of chametz, you're in big trouble. So what's the closest thing to chametz? Matzah, right? How does chametz happen? Chametz happens when you have flour and water that's mixed, and the dough is allowed to sit. Now, obviously, when we make challah, you add yeast, but even if you don't add yeast, the dough rises and becomes chametz.
anything with wheat in it would not be considered
Wheat
wheat.
would not be considered what?
Would not be considered, would be considered clones.
Yeah.
Okay. In aroma today, on the shelf was, the rice pilaf and the,
The what?
what's the name of the company that makes the pilaf? You know, the little boxes,
Far East.
Far East. Far East products were on the shelf, couscous, and there's wheat in it.
Well, maybe it wasn't made from wheat. Maybe they made it from something else.
The ingredient said wheat.
I don't know. I can't speak for aroma. I can't.
No, well, the thing is, I was under the assumption that everything that they had there.
Kidneys. Kidney. That was the word.
Kidney.
That's the word we were looking for.
That's the word we were looking for.
Kidneys.
Kidneys. Kidneys is
Kidneys.
beans.
Beans or rice?
Yes,
Beans, not wheat.
but it said wheat in the ingredient.
Okay,
So I'm saying to you, is there any way that could be kosher for Passover?
Ooh, very hard. To have a wheat product kosher for Passover. That's not matzah.
It's not, yeah, I was gonna say, if it's not matzah, then
Oh, that's a tough one. So, have you guys ever heard of the term gebrachs before?
Yes.
Yes, yes. So,
No.
It's
so
wet matzah.
what?
Wet matzah.
Wet matzah? Yeah, yeah. So it actually means broken matzah because they break the matzah, put it in the soup. So there's an added stringency that a lot of people do. You might see some programs, gebrachs, non-gebrachs, which is we take extra care that the matzah shouldn't get after it's baked. Even after it's baked, and I showed you guys the videos of the matzah oven. If you see how hot it is and how fast the matzah bakes. So although there's a very, very, very limited chance there's unbaked flour on the surface of the matzah, but in the small chance that there is, and that unbaked flour is still subject to, if it's burned, it's not flour anymore. But just in case there's unbaked flour on top of the matzah, and we don't get the matzah, that's why, when I invite people over to my house, I don't go crazy. But if you'll notice, me and my family, we don't put matzah on the table. When I grew up, if you want to get Superman laser eyes beaming at you, you passed matzah over the table. All of a sudden, my father would look at you with the look of death. Yeah, we ate matzah off the table. Not usually. Here, eat back. Some people eat matzah over a bag. It's all the crumbs. I know another family, they eat matzah in a separate room. They get up, they do the mitzvah matzah there, and they come back to the table to eat the meal. I'm just saying.
so wait.
What?
So you're not at the edge of that pendulum swing. There's
No.
actually people farther.
Yeah.
What? Okay, so you got.
By the way, for me, I'm normal. The ones that do that, they're crazy.
Yeah, people are less crazy than they are, but that doesn't exempt you from being classified.
Right.
You have a matzah cover. You have to have 3 matzahs. Isn't that on the table?
No, but it's not touching the table.
Ah, okay.
So we're talking about, so when you take out the matzah and eat the matzah. So a lot of people will eat it over, right?
Oh, like
But-
if I wanted a piece of matzah, like in the morning.
Whatever. I'm saying, but
the second
you'll
day,
notice
that's
that you'll notice that we're eating the salad. A lot of people will take the matzah, like help scoop it. The matzah doesn't touch anything. Anything. Matzah is eaten, and this title of getting matzah wet, in Hebrew it's called matzah shruya. Shruya means to soak. In Yiddish it's called gebrachs. It's an added stringency. The Alter Rebbe writes in the Shulchan Aruch that because someone wrote him a letter, said, "Listen, you're gonna go all crazy. It's a little bit of maybe there's a little bit of flour. Maybe the flour is gonna get and maybe. Alter Rebbe wrote in text of one, yeah. Why? Because you're dealing with a biblical prohibition against having chametz.
Is this why some people don't make matzah brie during the week?
Exactly.
Matzah bread.
Matzah bread. Yeah, but yeah, exactly. That's why you ever been to my house for a seder?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen matzah balls?
No, come to think of it, you're right. Yeah.
Well, there you go. This picture has matzo balls in it.
It's not Pesach.
But
It's
they're
2 weeks
selling
before.
matzo ball soup.
Again, this is an added stringency. I want to point out, because I've spoken about this in Chalav Yisrael before. Added stringency doesn't mean if you don't do it my way, you might as well, go down go drive down the block and walk into the church. No, that's not what I'm saying. It's an added stringency. Doesn't mean the people are not eating chametz. That doesn't mean, they're not Jewish or they're not observant. It's not a stringency. You take it upon yourself. Now, on Pesach, I wouldn't eat in anyone's house. That's, I'll tell you another private story because Terrell doesn't watch these classes anyway.
Make sure she watches this one.
So the Alter Rebbe writes in the Code of Jewish Law. It's actually brought down in Hayom Yom that on Pesach we don't invite other people. I'm talking about in the Chabad community. Why? Because every family has their
Big difference.
shtick, and you don't want to offend anybody.
Yeah.
This way, no, if someone invites you, want to go, but the custom is, growing up on Pesach, we didn't eat. We ate every meal at home. There was no. Actually, we did have families invited over, but these were families that, whatever, the families, people were away, but in the neighborhood, we didn't eat by anybody, right? So I grew up. You don't eat by anybody. When Mati and Hitchem moved down, so Cyril starts talking, we do meals together. I said, I'm not eating by the Goldschmidts. I said, what are you talking about? She says, on Pesach, you don't eat by anyone else. Like I grew up, my father didn't eat by his brothers. Cyril looked me in the eye and said, listen to me. I said, this ain't Brooklyn, all right? I got one sister, we're all by ourselves, we're going. So we go. that was the end of that. But the Alter Rebbe writes because the chametz is a biblical. It says over here, the last line. It's a biblical transgression. So whenever you're talking about the biblical transgression, I mean, I'm trying to think how to say this. Going crazy is not out of the realm of question because it's a biblical transgression, and it's a very, very, people don't realize how major it is. That's why we try to people to sell the chametz. I went to the Chamber of Commerce this morning, breakfast, because I know a bunch of Jews are there, so I was selling chametz. The guy's like, hey, what's the catch? I said, no catch. Name and address. But what do I have to do? You don't have to do anything. Just name and address. It took a couple minutes. But owning chametz on Pesach is a big, big problem. It's like eating on Yom Kippur. Same punishment listed in the Torah. People don't realize it. So the Alter Rebbe writes because of that. It's okay. And like the Rebbe writes in Haggadah, the Rebbe's Haggadah is very nice Haggadah. The Rebbe has an Haggadah with commentary and different things. Very interesting. Okay, they translate it into English. Very, very nice Haggadah. And he writes in the Haggadah, he writes, we're extremely careful to consuming matzah shria. Therefore, the matzahs on the table have to be covered at all time. And before we pour any water, you have to make sure. And when we wash our hands for the meal, so normally, by the way, you're not supposed to touch the bread, challah, with wet hands, because we learned last week your hands are now ready for impurity. So generally, you shouldn't touch challah with wet hands. But on Pesach, even more so, we don't touch the matzah with the wet hands. And normally in Ma'amar Chorona we do it on the lips, and we go our hands, and then we do it on our lips. On Pesach we don't do it on the lips, just in case there's crumbs and everything else. So you get to go home 3 seconds faster. So that is for the first 7 days on Pesach. Comes the last day of Pesach. Comes the last day of Pesach. I thought if I silenced it here, it would silence it there. But comes the last day of Pesach, and the Alter Rebbe says on the last day of Pesach, if you want to have wet matzah, do you mind closing the? Because I know this guy. He's not going to stop.
Oh.
It says on the last day of Pesach, if you want to have wet matzah, go ahead. That's what the Alter Rebbe says. If you want to have wet matzah, go ahead. The previous Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe writes in text number 4, if you want to, we make sure to have wet matzah. And the last day of Pesach, we make sure to have a wet matzah. One second, the Alter Rebbe wrote, if you want, you can. All of a sudden, we make it a thing. So obviously, a couple questions come up. Number 1 says, the first 7 days you were fanatic. Actually, whatever. We'll do the questions the other way around. Where is it? So this question is, the Alter Rebbe wrote, it's okay, it's a leniency, and all of a sudden now we make it a point. And you went from being fanatical about not making the matzah wet to making it...
Fanatical to make it wet.
Exactly. So what's going on? All right. So in order to understand, we first got to understand why we eat matzah. What's wrong with chametz? What are we celebrating on Pesach? I mean, it's a nice holiday and everything else.
We're celebrating freedom. Yeah,
Freedom from what?
We got out of Egypt and we were no longer slaves.
Good. It's a nice story that happened to some people we don't know 3,500 years ago. Question is, what is it? Remember, everything in the Torah, they're templates. Egypt represents something. Exodus represents something. So in order to learn a lesson for ourselves, we have to understand what these templates represent. So Pesach, there are 2 parts to Pesach, right? There's the beginning, the first 2 days of Pesach, and the last 2 days of Pesach. And they have two different themes. The Rebbe writes, it looks text number 6. It's a very, very powerful text. He has the first day of Pesach is commemorating how God liberated us from Egypt. That was the first redemption. It was carried out by Moses, the first Redeemer, sorry. That was the beginning. The final days of Passover, the holiday, celebrating the future redemption. When Hashem will send Mashiach to liberate us from our current exile, Mashiach will be the final Redeemer. So the first day of Passover is Moshe's day of redemption, celebration. The final day of Passover is Mashiach's day of celebration. Now, if you pay attention, on the last day of Pesach, after 8 days of hearing the rabbi speak, you're like, enough is enough. Between your between your bagels and pizza withdrawal. My mother-in-law gets so upset if we say anything chametz. You can't even say the word chametz on Pesach. She gets so when she's around, I say the ches word. It's like it's like a curse word. She's but the last day of Pesach, the whole theme in general, the last 2 days of Pesach, specifically the last day, the theme is all about Mashiach. And the Haftorah for that day is a famous Haftorah from Isaiah. See text number 11. It talks about Isaiah chapter 11. Famous chapter 11, text number 7, where the famous prophecy where Yeshaya says all the great things are going to happen when Mashiach comes. It says that a shoot shall spring forth from the stem of Yishai, Jesse, Yishai is David's father. And a twig shall sprout from his roots, and the Spirit of God will rest upon him, and he shall be animated by fear of God, and shall judge the poor justly. And it talks about first who this guy is going to be. He's going to be this a tremendous person, and because the story of Mashiach starts really even before Mashiach comes, it says a ray, a glow of Mashiach shines on the 8th day. So the Baal Shem Tov instituted an interesting custom, which we do here. So how do we celebrate the first redemption? With matzah and wine. So how are we going to celebrate the final redemption?
Matzah balls.
Matzah balls. Exactly. So therefore, on the last day of Pesach, we have a mini seder. At the end of Pesach, we come here, we sing the Gunim, we tell stories, we drink matzah and wine. Who started that custom? The Baal Shem Tov. Text number 8. The Rebbe writes, this was the custom of the Baal Shem Tov to partake of 3 meals on the last day of Passover. The last meal he called Mashiach's meal. The festive meal of Mashiach, the last day of Passover, the radiance of Mashiach is openly revealed. Okay, so what's the difference between the first redemption and the last redemption? Well, the first one's first, last one's going to be last, but also the last one's going to be final. Let's go to the story of the first redemption. If you remember, obviously, biblical scholars present, the Jewish people,
Speak for yourself.
the Jewish people ran away from Egypt. Right, the whole thing of Pharaoh chased after them. In fact, the beginning of the portion, Bishalach, says, "Vayhi Bishalach Pari." And Pari sent the Jewish people, and he said, and when Pari saw the Jewish people escaped, the Jewish people had to escape Egypt. You escape when someone's trying to hold you back. If someone's letting you go, somebody's in prison, they escape. If their term is up and they walk out the front door, that's not escaping.
That's furlough.
Whatever it is, it's what it do? When you get off on good behavior or they're off on probation or something, parole. The Jewish people didn't have to run out of Egypt, right? Remember, we're going to read it in 2 weeks. Paro got up in the middle of the night. The kids sing the song. Paro in his pajamas in the middle of the night. He got up because it says there was no home without a dead person, multiple dead in the homes. And he said, and he chased down Moshe and Aaron, and he said, get up, leave my people, you, your wives, your children, your animals, take whatever you want, take from us and just leave. I think I told you this before. The whole thing with power reminds me of my principal. My principal in high school kick us out. Didn't just do it to me. He did it to me a few times. He
You
practiced.
didn't graduate, you got kicked out?
No, I didn't say expelled. Kicked out for the day, whatever it is. So I had the pleasure of him practicing me a few times. But you wouldn't just say, Druzy, go home. You said, Druzy, take your hat, your jacket, your tefillin, your gemara, your sid, pens and pencils, your notebook, and go home. That's what Pari does, right? Take your gold and your silver, your clothing, your wife, your children, right? Chad Gadya, go and get out, right? Why did the Torah make us? It doesn't make it sound. It says they ran away. They escaped Egypt. Why did they have to escape Egypt? I'm telling you, that guy's not gonna give up. Hey, Ron. So what's the reason? The reason is because, the Jewish people left Egypt, but there was still Egypt inside of the Jewish people. It means the Jewish people. The real problem was they started becoming very Egyptian. It's one thing that a guy lives, a Jew lives in Egypt. Like Maimonides lived in Egypt. Maimonides never forgot that he didn't belong in Egypt. Right? In fact, Maimonides would sign his name, I am Moshe, son of Maimon, who violates 3 transgressions every single day because a Jew is not allowed to live in Egypt, you know? But that's only because if you call home, if you're only passing through, you live there because of
Hotel room.
even if you live there for a long time, even if you live there, but if you're living there because of extenuating circumstances, like Maimonides had to run away from fanatical Muslims, the fanatical Christians. That's why he came all the way to Egypt. So Maimonides is a prime example of a Jew who lives in Egypt, but he's not in Egypt. That's where his address is, but he doesn't live there. The problem with the Jews were that they were becoming Egyptian. I think I told you the story. There was a chassid who was a businessman. He was the chassid of the Rebbe Rashab. Late 1800s, early tonight, by the way. Tonight is the 2nd of Nisan. Tonight's the yard site of the Rebbe Rashab. Reb Shalom Dei Ber Lubavitch. So it's very worthwhile to say a story of the Rebbe Rashab. So he was a Rebbe in Russia in the late 1800s and early 1900s. So then already you had people, Jews were businessmen, they were accepted by society. So this guy, this chassid, when he was doing business with the Russians, he couldn't come dressed like a chassid. They would laugh at him. They wouldn't take him seriously. So he would dress, whenever he did business, he would dress whatever the suit was of the time. You ever see those, when they recolor those videos? It's very interesting to see. They have these videos of Paris, 1905, whatever it is, or New York, and they add color to it. You see the way people, it's very, very interesting. I think they just released one recently. It's like Paris, I think it was like. So obviously, in Russia, there was such a distinction between the Jews, the observant Jews, and the secular society. When a person dressed like in the secular general clothing, it was a statement. This guy spent most of his time business doing with the goyim and the secular people. So most of his time he dressed, in the business suit, whatever it was. Like now, rabbis wear suits, but it wasn't back then. It wasn't like that. The observant Jews and rabbis dressed very different. And then whenever he would come to the Rebbe, he hung around the Jewish neighborhood, he would dress like however the Yidden, dressed. One day he thought to himself, he came to Lubavitch. I think it was Lubavitch. He said, the Rebbe is a tzaddik. The Rebbe is a righteous person. And the Rebbe can see, things not in front of him. The Rebbe has divine inspiration. Think he doesn't know that I'm wearing a suit most of the time? Who am I fooling here? So he decided when he came into Lubavitch, he came with a suit. He walked into the Rebbe and he's wearing a suit. The Rebbe Shab says to him, I'm very disappointed. You think I didn't know you were wearing a suit? Of course I knew you were wearing a suit. But I thought the suit was the fake you. And the chassid was the real you. I thought the suit was a facade. Now you come into Lubavitch, you come into my office, wearing a suit. So now I see the suit is the real you, and the chassid is the fake you. That cut that guy down. That cut deep. The problem the Jews were having in Egypt was, you right, Makshay?
Yeah, just a little minor attack.
The problem that the Jews were having in Egypt was they were becoming the suit. They were becoming Egyptians. It wasn't just enough to geographically leave Egypt. It wasn't enough. They had to get out of Egypt. When Mashiach comes, it's not going to be like that. When Mashiach comes, see text number 9, Yeshaya says, I forgot, I'm sorry. It says, no, Yeshaya says, we're going to go. Take our time. Not with haste. I'm going to lead you out. And he says that Zechariah says when Mashiach comes, there's not going to be any false prophets. There's not going to be evil, because when the Jews left Egypt, you know what the problem was? There was still Egypt. Egypt didn't cease to exist. It's not like everyone became, servers of one God. Everyone adopted a monotheistic faith. No, there was still Egypt. There was still idolatry. God was taking the Jews out of Egypt. In fact, that was the whole big deal. Moshe tells the Jewish people in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 4 or 5, around there. He says, think about it, guys. Have you ever heard of such a thing? That God takes a people amongst another people, makes them a select group and talks to them, and they live and think about what happened here. You were in a society. God, He took you out of that society and to create a totally different culture and society. It's not normal. But when Mashiach comes, there's not going to be any Egypt. Not geographically. The whole concept of idolatry, whatever thing, there's no reason to run anywhere. Instead, the whole world's going to change. When God took us out of Egypt, we were the people that believed in one God. In fact, the whole point, this is not for this class, but the whole point of the 10 plagues was, what was the whole point of the 10 plagues? Who remembers from previous classes? I'll give you a free regal if you remember.
Well, it was to prove that there was only one God, one Hashem.
Right. But who was He proving it to? The Jews. No.
To the Goyim.
If God wanted to take the Jews out, He could have taken the Jews out, but God needs Paro's permission. Think about it. God said, I'm not going to take the Jewish people out until Paro says yeah. Realize how ridiculous that sounds? God needs Paro's permission. But it wasn't about teaching the Jews there was one God. The Jews believed. The Jews believed when Moshe came the first time and said, I'm going to take you out. What are the Jewish people? It says they believed in Moshe. They believed. They bowed down. They prostrated. They celebrated because God finally remembered. The whole point of the 10 plagues was to prove to the Egyptians that was one God. That was the problem. And the idea was the Jewish people are going to go get the Torah at Sinai. Then they're going to go into Israel, create a society. From that society, they're going to teach the whole world. That's the idea. When Mashiach comes, it's not going to be this concept of evil, anti-godliness, or hurting each other. Like you see the famous prophecy, 445. This is a graphic. it says that the whole world is going to be transformed. Not only the humanity is going to be transformed. You can come sit. And not only is humanity going to be transformed, but even the animal kingdom is going to be transformed. Now, Maimonides says, is it going to be literal, figurative? We don't know. It doesn't make a difference. But the point is, this represented. Hold on, where are we going here? I'll go back to that picture in a second. This is represented when it says that the wolf is going to lie with the lamb. This is a famous, right? This is what we read on the last day of Pesach. The wolf is going to lie with the lamb. The leopard will lie with the kid. The calf with the lion cub, and a small child shall lead them. This is all. And so there will be no more war. No one will raise a sword, and the whole world will only want to know the knowledge of God. I mean, it's a beautiful, amazing prophecy. But if you want to, I don't know why this pops into my head. But off the subject. So this one guy talks to a rabbi. He's trying to convince. He's making an argument that Christianity is the real whatever of the Torah. So listen, the rabbi said, "Listen, you want to believe whatever you want to believe, fine, but don't come to me and tell me it's explanation of the Torah, because you say he's the Messiah, and in our belief, Messiah is going to bring peace, right? There's not going to be bloodshed and everything else. There's not one person who's responsible for more war and bloodshed to humanity than him. So you want to believe whatever you want, no problem, but don't. It's not a translation of our belief. The way he puts it, he hammers it home. Anyway, so now we can get back to this slide over here. Now we have to get back to why in the beginning of Pesach we were so afraid of chametz, and then the Pesach we're not so afraid, because in the first part of Pesach we're dealing with Egypt. Egypt is evil. Egypt represents all the bad, right? And it really raises a challenge to our own personalities and our self-improvement and self-development. So what do we got to do? We got to take ourselves out of that situation, because evil still exists. So the first part of Passover, no chametz. That's why you see the matzah is burning. Maybe if you see that picture, now you understand the chance of there being a little amount of flour is
Pretty
respectful.
Yeah.
pretty nil.
I'm going to tell you something. In my 40 years of eating matzah, I don't think I've ever seen. But still.
Right, but when the matzah comes out of the oven, it goes back through the room that the matzah.
No, it doesn't. No.
You didn't watch
No
the
way.
video all the way.
Yeah, no, it goes in there. It goes
It goes out the other way.
the other way. It goes around to the front. Yeah.
Now, what's very interesting, it hit me the other day before I went to sleep. The process of the baking of the matzah from the beginning to end is 18 minutes.
Yeah.
The number 18, chai.
Yeah. No, it's done well before. But the last day of Passover, when the chametz is not a threat anymore, or it's not as much a threat. So now,
They used to make matzah in the Rebbe's house in Boston.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Rebbe's house.
the Boston Rebbe. Yeah, not the Rebbe, the Boston Rebbe.
Boston Rebbe,
Oh.
excuse me.
Yeah.
Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Horowitz.
Yeah. So the Rebbe would get matzah baked on Erev Pesach. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, we were on the first.
And but the last day of Pesach, now that we're improving, so and we're talking about the time of Mashiach when chametz is going to be transformed. That's why in Pesach you can see, by the way, real matzah balls don't look that way. I mean,
No, they're too white.
exactly. I mean, it depends if you're using Manischewitz matzah or Shmor matzah. Shmor matzah balls are black.
Well, it's funny because my aunt growing up, both my aunts, one made them hard, the other one made them soft.
Oh yeah,
And-
cannonballs.
Yeah, and when I first married Sabrina in 2005, and we went to their house for Passover, I'm like, Sabrina, don't be surprised if they ask you a question about the matzah balls if you want hard or soft, because my family we eat them both ways.
See it like this?
She's like, excuse me? I don't even eat matzo balls, but if I have to, I'm going to eat them soft, not hard. Because the hard, you take a fork and go...
That reminds me of a joke from I guess it was 67, about the 6-Day War. And it shows a cartoon, guy standing at artillery. One guy says, Moish, we're running out of ammunition. The other one says, don't worry, I have my grandmother's matzah balls.
Exactly. Yeah. Jackie Mason has a whole thing. Cajun cooking is all fancy. Cajun cooking is burnt food. So I said I grew up with Cajun cooking. I had no idea. Okay, so now let's get a little. Let's do the Kabbalah part of it, and really how we can improve ourselves. It says so. The Zohar writes something very interesting. The Zohar Kabbalah writes. So the Jewish people, they were becoming very increasingly sullied and purified by Egypt. You know, like talking about Jackie Mason, all of a shalom. He says how the Jews try to out Gentile the Gentiles. Right? You have Whoopi Goldberg, Jacob Christensen, right? The Gentiles want to be Jewish and the Jews want to be Gentiles. So the problem was over there, the Jews were coming increasingly sunken into Egyptian culture. Now Kabbalah explains and why it's this number. We don't have time to get into it, but there are 50 gates of impurity, 50 portals, 50 levels of impurity. The Jewish people were holding at 49. That's why it says, just 3 times in the Torah, it uses this term. On that very day, at that very moment. It's when Noach entered into the ark. Because when people tried to stop him, when the Jews left Egypt, because it had to be that moment, and also when Moses went up on Mount Nebo to pass away, the Jewish people tried to stop him. They always thought about stopping him. So if he doesn't go up, he doesn't die. But what does it mean? Why was it so important for them to leave at that moment? Because it says if the Jewish people would have waited a little bit longer, they wouldn't have been able to leave. What does it mean they wouldn't be able to leave? They wouldn't be able to walk out? No, they've been so sedate, so messed up, that they would never be able to get the Egypt out of them. We see that the older generation never did get Egypt out of them. Because as we're going to read in the book of Numbers, every time something happens, we don't have watermelon, let's go back to Egypt. We don't have cucumbers, let's go back to Egypt. You forget what happened in Egypt? Imagine a freed black man comes to the north. He says, "You call this a hoagie? Ha! I'm going back to Richmond." I mean, just that's not. But you see how messed up they were. So, but God knew, obviously, Jewish people also know, that they're going to leave Egypt and they're going to go get the Torah. How many days from Egypt to the Torah? 49. That means in 49 days they have to go from the nether to the highest of the high. How do you see that it's there right here? How do you so how do you do it? This is why every day we count. And when we count the Omer, we don't just say today is day 1, today is day 2, today is day 3. We say today is day 1 of week 1, today is day 2 of week 1, right? And then when it's the second week, we say today is 15, which is 1 week. Which is 2 weeks and 1 day of the Omer, right? We're always counting days and weeks. So let's get a little bit not Kabbalistic. I mean, for those of you who have been to the Tanya class, you'll be familiar. So you know that there are that the human soul has 10 character traits. You have the 3. Ben, that's what we need before Pesach. More chametz. You have the 3 intellectual and the 7 emotional. And if you remember from the Tanya class, our problem isn't the intellectual. Your intellectual self is usually telling you to do the right thing. Your problem is your emotional self. Your intellectual self knows usually the right decision. Your emotional self. So let's take love, right? Good love is love for God. It turns you into a good person, right? Do good deeds. Love for your family, you have a healthy family. Then a person could have things that are not healthy love, right? Love for alcohol, love for drugs, love for whatever it is, right? I was talking to him, I think it was Mendy or something. I think it was the Yankees or something. He said, we. I said, there's no we. They don't know you. They don't pay your rent. There's no we. It's they. You know, people get very, 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 you know, you can, I remember my 7th grade teacher told me he had to once give, I remember this, because he once had to give couples counseling, because there's a guy who's a crazy Yankee fan, and he proposed to her on condition that she attends every single Yankees game with him. Now, if it was football and it was 16 games, maybe it was every.
And what would have happened if she was the Red Sox fan?
I don't think you'd go with her. but I don't remember if it was every home game or I think it was every home game. You know what every home game is?
82 games.
82 games.
Yep.
Well, wait.
81 games. 81 games.
Whatever.
I'm saying, can you imagine?
Yeah, but so this was like more modern times.
In the 90s.
After more
In
than
the 90s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because in the 60s they didn't have.
Right. 154 games, whatever. So the point is, you have good love and you have bad love. The idea of working on yourself and the idea of improving is you're trying to direct. You say, listen, I have this emotion, and am I directing it towards what's good, or am I directing it towards what's not so good? So every day we work on, if you look inside the Siddur, every single day, it's on page 130, I think it starts at 136 in the Siddur. We start, and you'll say, today's one day of the Omer, and it'll say, chesed of chesed, love of love. Are you loving the right thing? Then the next day is gevura of chesed, discipline and love. It means you're a very giving person. Yeah. If a guy comes over to you and says, a guy who's clearly an addict, comes over to you and says, Kai, I have $10. And you say, Stanley's a nice guy, you give him $10. Is that good love? Right? Or why lie? I need a beer. Right? You ever see these guys, right? So the idea is you take every day you're working on another attribute. So you have the 7 general attributes: love, discipline, compassion, fortitude, Hoid is glorious splendor. You have bonding and self-worth. So there's good and there's bad. So you're trying to, and each one is subdivided into 7, or really into 10. So that's why you have love of love, discipline of love, compassion of love, enduring of love. It was very nice to show you, to show you love for a second. There was a chassid. When a guy would come to collect tzedakah from him, he would put his hand in his pocket, he'd give it, and he'd say something, and he'd put his hand in his pocket and give some more. Someone asked him, says, why do you do that? If you're going to give $1 anyway, so why? So he said, because every time it's another fight with the Yitzhars. I give, then I had to speak to my evil inclination and say, no, let's do it a little more. He was trying to train himself. This is what the 7 weeks are about. We're trying to perfect our character, and we subdivide it into those people. What do you want to be? I want to be a good person, those beauty passions. I believe in world peace. What does that mean? I don't know, right? So, but Judaism demands that you focus in, and you try to improve. Okay, so in the beginning of Pesach, you're just leaving Egypt. You got a lot of bad. It's your first day in boarding school. You got a lot of bad character traits. So you know what's we just learned this yesterday. You know what's one of the worst character traits a person can have? Ego. Ego is terrible, because it's one thing, if you're a cheap guy, if you're not a compassionate guy. But ego is, if let's say, for example, you have a character, and I come to you and say, listen, Stanley, or whatever, let's talk. But when you have an ego, you're going to tell me, what are you talking about? So ego is the worst character trait a person can have. First of all, it's false. What are you getting excited over yourself for? Relax. But so what's chametz? What's bread? Bread is puffed up. It's all for the hot air. So in the beginning, when you want to work in your character development, you have to notice that you have a problem. You got to take out the ego. So in the beginning of Pesach, you get rid of the chametz. Absolute fanatical. You got to wipe out every chametz. That's why the matzah is very, very thin. No ego. In Hebrew, it's called bittul. Bittul means you're given over to something greater than yourself. You're going to work on yourself. Now, after a week passes, and you started working on yourself a little bit. Now, chametz is a problem, but it's not a threat like it used to be. So that's why at the end of the week we can take some matzah, and we can put it in the water. It's not a threat. Now,
What about matzah pie all these years?
so you missed the beginning. I'm saying so some people that are fanatical about not getting matzah wet the first 7 days of Pesach. So we're explaining why that is. What's the significance behind it? He's Sfardim, you know. That's why I only invited you for the second half of the class.
I was picking up the fun.
By the way,
It's you, not me. He's always picking on
I
me.
think he only
by the way, there was a guy. He used to joke with me about Sfardim Ashkenazim, and one time in show we used to joke, and for one Shabbos he got angry at me. We always used to joke, and all of a sudden he got all, hey, it wasn't nice what you said. No, I'm sorry. I thought we were. I know. I'm kidding around. Anyway, so now is all ego or is pride, all pride bad?
No.
It depends what the pride is coming from. If the pride of the ego is coming from you, from something you did, then it's bad. But if the pride is coming from something greater than you, right? Or let's say it's a Torah class, right? So a guy's going to come over to you and says, trade in this Judaism thing for a Hare Krishna thing, right? So you crazy? We've been doing this for 3,500 years. You Johnny come lately with your 50-year-old John Smith, whatever it is. Do me a favor. You know, Judaism been around since 244. You know what I'm saying? 1000 BC. Relax, okay? Get in line. You know, we have something to teach you. There's good pride. Pride is when you're proud of your Judaism, you're proud of your heritage. That's good pride. That's why at the end of the 7-week journey, when it comes to Shavuos in the temple, by the way, was kosher for Passover the entire year. Do you know it? Even the showbread we call lechem upon lechem. By the way, you think bread, you think chametz. When the Torah says lechem, doesn't mean chametz. In the temple, there was a table with 12 loaves, and there were loaves were like this by this. They weren't chametz.
Solid bricks.
No, they were fresh. No, the Kohanim fought over them. How they did it, I don't know. But yeah, they did it. There was only one day a year in the temple. Am I still recording?
Yep.
Yeah. There was only one day a year, and that one day was Shavuos. At the end of the 7-week journey, you see on page text 14 and text 15. At the end of the 7-week journey, they would bring leavened. See the word leavened. The second leaven is chametz. And Maimonides writes, it's explicitly stated in the Torah that they should be leavened bread and they bring yeast to make sure. Because what's good pride? Like good pride is the king Yeshafat. Yeshafat yigbal ligba b'darchei Hashem. He was proud, and Yahweh was proud in the ways of Hashem. The previous Rebbe writes there was a chassid who used pride against evil inclination. When he would get an impulse for an avera, he said, "Do you know who you're talking to? Do you know who you're talking to?" He would tell his own evil inclination. He says, "I am a chassid of the Alter Rebbe, and you want me to sin?" Like, so there's a concept of good pride. The Alter Rebbe explains why this pride is important. Because truthfully, he says, that although one must be exceedingly humble, nevertheless, a person should have some resolve, even a bit of pride. If one would have any pride, they would never engage in service of God. You got to believe you're worth it. Many times we don't do a mitzvah. Why? Because we think to ourselves, what's my tefillin? What's my little thing? So remember in the beginning of the class, we asked the question, is it worthwhile doing anything if you're not going to do everything? If I only do a little, say, if I'm not going to do everything, what's the point? That's not true. This counting of the Omer has 49 individual days, and every day you could work on something else. And by the way, even if in the counting of the Omer, you make a blessing every day, unless you miss a day. What happens if you miss a day? You can't make the blessing, right?
Right.
Do you continue counting?
Yes.
Yeah, you continue counting, because every individual day is still a mitzvah. And this is what the lesson is. You got to turn the bad ego, the bad pride, into good pride. This is the concept of good pride. When you do a mitzvah, you have to acknowledge that God called your number and says, I want you to do a mitzvah for me. When you're eating the matzah, God says, I want you to eat the matzah for me. You think, God, you want me to eat this cracker? Yeah, but it's a cracker. Yeah, but I want you to. All right, God, if you want me to eat it, I'll eat the cracker. Fine. Whatever you want. If you're into that. You're saying, but you got to see yourself as worthwhile. If you look at yourself as a shmata, then how are people going to look at you? As a shmata. You got to look at yourself as, I remember as a kid they would tell us. So you got to go outside and you got to look presentable. So I remember asking the guy, I thought you taught us that we don't care about what anyone else thinks about us, right? He says, yeah, but you represent something. If you look at yourself, if people look at you as a shmata, you consider yourself a shmata. So when you do a mitzvah, no matter if you're not gonna do all mitzvahs before, mitzvahs after, but you gotta see yourself as worthwhile. It's good chametz. So every mitzvah counts. Okay, key points. So on the last day of Pesach, we said we're ready to refine one attribute. We're able to require required use of wet matzah or chametz for the sake of the mitzvah. By giving the improvement of a single aspect of the personality full dedication, you have the ability to create a small slice of perfection. All right, key points. Shabbat custom is to eat as much matzah shrei as possible on the last day of Passover, which, by the way, isn't the most tasty thing. Putting matzah in soup is like, it's not like, it's still matzah, by the way. I have to, in my house, we're very, very strict on Pesach, so I don't have any processed food. So at the end of the Pesach, yay, we could put matzah on the table, we could put avocado on the matzah. Then you bite it, nah, it's still matzah.
You can even tempt the cream cheese.
You can put cream cheese in. I mean, me personally, I don't eat processed food the whole Pesach. I don't eat cream cheese. The whole Pesach. Milk, cream cheese, nothing. Me personally. I thank my father for that one. My father would have had yogurt. Achron Shel Pesach, the last day of Pesach, is the celebration of the future messianic redemption. When Mashiach comes, all evil and impurity will be eradicated. Therefore, on Achron Shel Pesach, the last day of Pesach, we're less concerned with corruption of personality. Chametz, which represents ego and evil. The counting of the Omer is a process of spiritual refinement. Each day we refine one more midah. Midah is a character trait. On the last day of Pesach, we already find one set of a midah, a character. Therefore, we're less concerned with the remote possibility because we're building towards, not there yet, but we're building toward it. All right, next Tuesday, no class.
No, you were talking about the Omer. When does the counting of the Omer start?
The night of the second night of Passover.
Second night.
So the first night of Passover is Monday night. Mm-hmm. We start counting Tuesday night.
23rd.
Yeah.
Yes.
And every day.
There's no class the next two.
Well, 2 Tuesdays from tonight is the Pesach, is the second Seder. I'll be giving a class at my house with wine, matzah, lettuce. It's going to be wild.
I gotta put up with all that.